Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Meso. Today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and it's the last Thursday of the month, and you know what that means. It's time for the monthly MiSTer News Roundup, and I will absolutely say it has been a news-filled month, probably more so than any other month that I've been covering MiSTer for almost 2 years now. We got so many new announcements, so many new cores, and so many new things happening. We got a lot of stuff to go over, but before we do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe. That notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. Now, off the top, obviously, some of the news is going to be that FPGAZumSpass, or Robert, has announced that he is working on a Nintendo 64 core. Now, this is not a guarantee that it will ever actually work on MiSTer. He is exploring that, and there does seem to be some good results off the top. But he just announced that he's working on it, and he starts by making software cycle accurate emulators, just like he did with the PlayStation 1 core. He doesn't immediately go to FPGA, he works on software emulation first to understand the system, and then he pivots over to getting it onto an FPGA chip. But he's been working on a secret core for a very long time, and in April we finally got to find out what that core was, and nobody really had guessed Nintendo 64, and I had my money on Virtual Boy actually leading the charge, with 3DO being a close second, and I didn't really have Nintendo 64 on my radar as well. But it's so exciting to think about the possibility of actually getting a Nintendo 64 core onto the MiSTer. Now, of course, there's a lot of steps between here and there, though. Nintendo 64 is a complicated platform, and the FPGA chip on MiSTer does have limitations. It seems like it can do almost everything, but there is going to be a finite upper cap of what that chip is able to do with the logic gates. Now, we know that the memory expansion is no big deal whatsoever. Robert has said that adding in that extra RAM is perfectly fine, as is the bandwidth, but there's still going to be a little bit of wiggling around to see what is truly possible on MiSTer FPGA, because the Nintendo 64 is going to push the silicon of that chip to its absolute limit, and it'll be really interesting to watch the progress and see how it unfolds. And Robert is the type of person, at least with the PlayStation 1 core, that releases test cores over and over again for people to check out and see how they're working and do bug reports. So it's really exciting to see the potential of maybe sometime this summer, this fall, or winter, we might have a preview Nintendo 64 core on MiSTer FPGA. No guarantees, but it's probably some of the top news of the month, and of course we want to lead off the video with it. Now, moving on to one of my favorite developments of the month personally, this is Wickerwaka's Irem M92 core. It has gone from preview, working with just a few games, to working with basically all of the games with manual installation, to going over to update all. If you update your MiSTer at the time of watching this video, it's going to pull down all of the working cores along with everything else you need, and you're going to be able to play stuff like Ninja Baseball, Batman, and that is incredible, because this board has some absolutely iconic games on it. Something like this here is just absolutely spectacular. I love it. It's so much fun. Gun Force 2, which is an absolutely wild game that definitely went on to inspire Metal Slug, or things like In the Hunt, a horizontal shmup that takes place in a submarine. These are just iconic arcade boards and games. In a lot of instances, they never got home ports, and in almost all of the instances, an original arcade board is going to cost you an absolute fortune. But leave me a comment down below and tell me, have you played the Irem M92 core yet, and what your favorite game is so far? For me, it's probably R-Type Leo. I just love this. It's an awesome shmup, and I haven't played it as much recently as I would like to, and I've been having an absolute blast checking it out on this core. And I know that I did that tutorial for the manual installation, but this basically went from preview to update all in like 3 weeks. The speed at which it rolled out was absolutely incredible, and it is so much fun to have it here on MiSTer. It's another one of those arcade boards. It's not always in the same conversation, something like Capcom CPS or CPS 2 or 3, Neo Geo, things like that, but it is amazing. Now, another huge development this month, and one that was not expected whatsoever, just kind of popped up, is that SRG 320 released a new build of his Sega Saturn core. It is the April build, and it improved on a ton of stuff. Now, I did a video on this, and if you do want to start testing it or playing it, go ahead and look for that link below, because it is still manual installation, and you do still need to have the unstable main MiSTer build working, or else you're not going to get anything loading into the core. You'll get the BIOS screen in the menu, but that's about it. And I will say that a lot of new games are working, like Symphony of the Night on Saturn, and the sound that it is making is absolutely spectacular, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll come back and tell you what else happened in April. Just sounds so good, and it's so fun to have a new Sega Saturn core build here, because we had all been testing on the most recent one, which was December of 2022. And not only is it great to have a new core to test, it also means SRG320 is in a space where he can keep working due to his current situation. And I will say that if you are going to test this core, it is a very organic result core. And this footage here of Virtual Cop's actually from Andy D from the MiSTer Discords. He has the same setup as I do, except he loads his games from a different solid state storage device, and he gets Virtual Cop to run where it does not run on my system. So sometimes the games I show you will not run on your MiSTer, and we're not 100% sure why, but of course being a work in progress core, that is just how it is. But there is a new Saturn core build for April. It plays a lot more games than the previous core did, and some of them are even improved from there. Now moving on to the arcade side, Jotego has released the beta core for Haunted Castle. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, if you haven't watched any of my previous videos, and this is an arcade exclusive release of the Castlevania series. And I will say, I don't like this game whatsoever, but some people really do. But it is the foundational work for some of the CPU technology that Konami used back in this era, and it's going to allow you to get other games that are running that a lot more people are going to remember and enjoy a lot more, because for every Haunted Castle, there's going to be the Simpsons Arcade game. And this is just Hall of Fame first round ballot good, and that's so much fun that he is working on that. And you'll see, speaking of Konami, Furtek says that he is almost ready for a beta release of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles core. Now maybe by the time you watch this it'll be out, or maybe it'll be out next week, next month, who knows. But having something like this on MiSTer is what a lot of people have been waiting for. Because when you think of arcade games from the 90s, this is one of those games that just pops into everybody's head. It's such an iconic beat 'em up. Konami absolutely nailed it with a 10 out of 10 on this one. And it is one of those games, of course MiSTer's going to end up having it. We're just not sure how long it's going to take, but it looks like Furtek is getting closer as we speak. And maybe, like I said, by the time you're watching this, he has released a core, because I recorded these 3 days before they air. So this is Monday. You're going to watch it on Thursday. But I can't wait to have games like this on MiSTer, even though it's available on pretty much everything else. Having a cycle-accurate FPGA core of TMNT on MiSTer, 10 out of 10 chef's kiss level of good. Back to Jotego here for a second though, because he's also talking about his work on the Neo Geo Pocket and Pocket Color. And this isn't something that's popped up recently from Jotego. He was talking about working on this back in 2022 with his team, and it looks like he is still working on it, and that is great because the Neo Geo Pocket is an absolute blast of a handheld system, because SNK wasn't just the Neo Geo in arcades. It also had other hardware in the 90s, and there's a really good library of games on the Neo Geo Pocket that are going to be spectacular to play in FPGA, especially because original Neo Geo Pocket and Pocket Color hardware, if you don't mod the screen and change it out, it is very washed out because it is 90s technology. So having something like the Neo Geo Pocket on MiSTer with either clean analog video out or HDMI out is going to be an absolute blast, because the Metal Slug games alone are worth the price of admission, and Jotego's always making awesome cores, so I 100% can't wait to see this come to fruition, because even though I own the hardware, I still want to play it on my MiSTer. Now going back to the arcade side of things, now that we've gone to a handheld, there's also work underway for the Williams Midway cores, the Y and Z units as well. That's going to be games like Narc, and we've talked about this on a previous news video. Midway had such an awesome looking platform back in the day. You know a Midway game when you see it, and they also loved just using wanton violence in an era where a lot of other games weren't anywhere near as violent. Narc, you can just explode people and watch their bones shoot across the screen, and it's an absolute blast. But this isn't just talking about Narc. He's also doing the Z unit as well, so it's both Y and Z. I know those letters don't mean much, but I'll explain them right now. You'll see here on the Z unit hardware, this is just Narc. One core, one piece of work, one game. But if we go over to the Y unit hardware, you're going to start seeing a lot more games running on the same board, including a big one right there, Mortal Kombat, of course, Smash TV, one of my personal favorites. So it seems like he is getting closer to getting these running on MiSTer, and I know, again, just like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this is something that people really want to see, because Mortal Kombat is one of the most iconic 2D versus arcade fighting games of its generation. Now, it was never my favorite, but I'm still excited to see it come to MiSTer, because I'll probably play it and try to get better at it, because I'm really not a very good Mortal Kombat player. Definitely spent a lot more time with Neo Geo and Capcom games back in the day. but this is a lot of people's favorite fighting game franchise of all time, and it's definitely something we need to see on MiSTer, because what is MiSTer Arcade Core folder without a Mortal Kombat game working in it? And like I said, I know a lot of people are excited about this, and hopefully by next month's news episode, maybe we'll have a beta core for at least something on this list, because there's a ton of fun to be had on these boards. And it's not just Mortal Kombat, Smash TV runs on the same platform as well. And Smash TV is one of the most iconic arcade games of all time, and it's probably one of my favorite midway games. It's just an arena shooter. You have 4 ways to shoot, and you need to destroy everything on screen. And just like in Narc, I just love the level of violence in this game. When you shoot somebody, they just explode, and it's an absolute blast. And I will say, versus Mortal Kombat, I am way more excited for Smash TV, but that's just me. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what one game from the Midway Williams Y unit boards would you want to see first on MiSTer, because I would be really curious. I'm assuming Mortal Kombat's going to win, but you never know. Maybe there's a lot of love out there for Smash TV. That is what I'm hoping, at least, because I just want a brand new toaster, and I've killed about 40 people. I think that's probably an appropriate prize for that level of murder. Speaking of arcade cores, SRG320, who we mentioned previously with the new Saturn core build, also surprised everyone with a very alpha work-in-progress core for Battletoads Arcade. This is definitely a rare deep cut game. When people think Battletoads, they're gonna think about Nintendo consoles way before arcades, at least if you're not me, that is, and it's so much fun to see him working on something else other than Saturn. Now, I did a video on this as well, and it's definitely very alpha, and there's going to be a lot of graphical glitches, but I love seeing how the sausage gets made when it comes to MiSTer FPGA, and having this core here is an absolute blast, and it was such a surprise. It's so awesome to see it. I love it. I bet you do too. Now, moving on to somebody else, RCA Victorco here is working on Kiki Kai Kai, and if that doesn't sound familiar, maybe Pocky and Rocky does to you. This is the first game in that series from Taito. It is a run and gun arcade game, and it's an absolute blast. It's cute, it's colorful, it's got a great soundtrack, and a lot of what Taito would do in the future kind of traces back to something like Kiki Kai Kai. I love this game, it's so much fun, and it is definitely not a cheap arcade board, so having a core for this on MiSTer would also be incredible, because I will say, it might be colorful, it might be cute, it might have a cutesy soundtrack, but this game is hard as nails tough, and it is going to challenge you the entire way, and this is something that I really do want to get better at. I can't wait for it to come over to MiSTer FPGA so I can just sit on my couch and play it, not having to worry about being in my office where my PC is to deal with MAME emulation. But get ready to die, because this game is not easy. Now, on the topic of arcades, Darren O here is working on the Galco Mega System 1, which might not sound familiar to you. It is one of the deeper cuts, but it has a game like Rodland on it. If you've ever played Parasol Stars, Rodland will make absolutely perfect sense to you at the top, and it is one of my favorite games on the board, but I like seeing some of these deeper cut systems being worked on for MiSTer as well, because like I said earlier, for every Neo Geo or Capcom CPS2, there's something like the Irem M92 or the System 1 board here, and there is a lot of fun to be had on them. And some of these boards are way more popular in different regions. If you grew up in the US, maybe you didn't see all of these games, but if you grew up maybe in Europe or South America or Japan, you may have encountered them. But that's the other part I love about MiSTer so much. It is encyclopedic in its nature, and just because you didn't play it doesn't mean it's not on MiSTer, and you can just go through the arcade core headings, pick out a game you've never heard of before, and you might find your new favorite game, and maybe Rodland will be your new favorite game. Who knows? Leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've ever played it. But recapping the big events for the month, because it has been an absolutely huge month. Getting a new build for the Sega Saturn core, absolutely spectacular, so much so that it's just one of those things that the Discord blew up when this came out. Not only because it is fun to test, but everyone does think about how SRG320 is doing, and seeing him publish work really is just him saying, I'm still here and I'm as good as I possibly can be. And like I said, if you want to get in on the Sega Saturn core testing, I have a video up that shows you how to get the newest core installed and running, because the more people that test, the more fun we have, and the more people we have to talk to about what's going on. If you want to see me test a particular game on my next MiSTer Saturn testing video, leave me a title down below and I'll check it out. But of course, probably the biggest news of the month was Robert announcing a potential Nintendo 64 core for MiSTer. People never thought this was going to be possible, There is still that asterisk of whether or not it could be, but Robert's an absolutely spectacular developer that did basically miracles with the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 1 2X core on MiSTer. So if anybody's going to be able to pull this off, I have 100% confidence. If he says he can do it, I bet he can. But maybe one day soon we'll be playing Nintendo 64 on MiSTer. But that is all the news that happened in April. It was a huge month. I didn't make 1 or 2, but 3 special videos with developments that were happening. It was basically all in the same week. First half of April seemed kind of quiet. Second half of April just exploded with things happening. But that's why I love MiSTer. On a Monday there's something to talk about, and on Tuesday everything happens. Short of that, I'll see you next week in another MiSTer video and videos throughout the week, but we are done, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.